client wants to build a new and very complicated project, a drone port, the first of its kind. I have no idea what a drone port would be. I'm making it up, but there you go. Floating airport? I don't know, whatever. That will likely take a fair amount of new research and negotiation with federal authorities to finalize the design requirements. What sort of contract should you suggest to the owner for the owner-architect agreement? And our choices are cost plus fee, lump sum with GMP, fast track, contingency-based contract. So the first one that we can definitely cross off the list is fast track. So fast track is a project delivery method where the whole point is that speed is of the essence. So you can imagine we got to get the addition to the school building done before fall because the kids show up in fall, right? And you got to get it done, right? So more important than how much money it costs is the timing. And so the way fast track works is you design the excavation and foundation system, and then you hand it over and they start building it. And then while you're working on the structural skeleton and the shell of the building, you then hand that over and they start building that on the foundation that they just finished. So you're designing and building at exactly the same time, which is, of course, crazy and bound to make mistakes. But the whole point is that, yeah, it's bound to make mistakes, but as long as those mistakes cost less than the downside of it taking longer, then it should be worthwhile. So places like stadiums where the teams are going to show up, or schools, or just like a downtown site that's super expensive to hold the land, something like that, that's when fast track makes sense, but not in a situation like this. Like there's no way to do fast track in a project like this, so it's definitely not C. And then D, contingency-based contract. I just made that up. There is no term contingency-based contract, but those are words that are real words, and contingency is sort of an interesting one in this context, and it's sort of plausible, but it just doesn't quite really make any sense. So the word contingency is sort of useful in this context, but it's not a thing enough for that to really make sense. So it comes down to A and B, the cost plus fee or the lump sum with the GMP. So let's talk about what those are for a second. So lump sum is exactly what it sounds like. Lump sum just means, all right, we're going to do this project for you for a $100,000 fee or $1 million fee or whatever it is. It's like, here's the lump sum. And a GMP is a guaranteed maximum price. So first of all, it's a little weird to say lump sum with GMP. You should be a little suspect of that one because a lump sum is kind of a GMP already. GMP is just sort of hammering home that the price isn't going to go up above that lump sum. But the idea there is, all right, so let's say we're looking at a project and we think, yeah, this is going to take, about X number of hours. We think we're going to be able to do it at X dollars per hour. So we think we can do this whole project for $250,000 architectural fee. And we're just going to say, that's just the fee. And then the scope changes a little bit, goes up or down, or things drag out, or they get it faster or whatever. It doesn't really matter. We've sort of given ourselves a fee. We're just like, that's just what the fee is going to be. Then certain things could change that, like the scope dramatically changes, or they decide, yeah, we want this, but then we also want you to do a bunch of marketing drawings for us, or certain other things could change that number. But effectively, you're just saying, here's the number. You can put it into your pro forma. That's what the number is going to be. It's a very useful way because the owners understand how much money it's going to be, and so they're with you. Like they get it, they know what's going on, and they're ready to move forward. So lump sum is a very useful way to go. But in a situation like this, where we've got this very complicated project, nobody's really sure how it's going to play out. If you were putting together the bid for that, like think about it. Like if you had this thing that was very open-ended, you weren't really sure how it was going to go, and really you're going to put a lump sum number on it, you're probably going to figure out what you think it's going to cost, and then you're going to like double it because like who knows, right? So you're going to add a whole bunch of money on in order to just cover yourself in case it takes a lot more hours than you were imagining when you first did it, because it's just not predictable. So the problem with lump sum in a complicated situation like this is it kind of pushes architects or contractors for that matter, but architects to add more to their fees than is really necessary because they're just not sure. So how could you battle that? Well, the sort of best possible answer in this situation is going to be a cost plus fee. It's effectively hourly, and the concept here, the reason that it's called cost plus fee is that it's not just that you're saying it's X dollars per hour. You're saying, here's all of our costs. So here's our, for the 5 employees working on it, here's what we pay them. Here's the overhead costs associated with them. Here's the insurance costs associated with them. We line up all of our costs for the amount of time that we've worked on it, and sort of by hour usually. Sometimes it's by day and a couple of other things, but typically it's by hour. And we line up all those costs. And then at the end, for each billing period, we then are able to add, in this case is referred to as a fee, but it's actually like a small profit that is sort of added onto the end. So it's our direct costs and then a small bit of profit that we can then say, all right, here's our total plus our little bit of profit. This is how much time we've spent on this month. That's how much you owe us. And the reason that would be a useful thing to the owners in this case is because in this very complicated thing, they just don't want you just adding money onto that lump sum in order to just cover yourself. They want, like, you're working, a certain number of hours. They're happy to pay you for those hours. They just don't want to pay you for a whole bunch of extra. So this is a perfect spot for a cost plus fee. The other kind of place, kind of interestingly, for a cost plus fee is in the exact opposite, where it's so simple and you've done it a bunch of times with that particular owner that you have a system going. Maybe the owner owns a big building with lots of tenant spaces in it, and every time a new tenant comes in, you do their new layout or something like that. And you have just sort of it down to a science, and like it really doesn't make sense to put together a proposal each time. They just sort of say, hey, we got a new client, it's 2,000 square feet, their lawyer's office, here, go for it. And you just keep giving them your hourly sheets, your cost plus fee information, and they pay it as the hourly work gets done. So very simple, repetitive things is very common for cost plus fee, and then quite complicated things. The place where cost plus fee doesn't make any sense is going to be in that middle ground where, like, imagine a situation where you're doing like a house and somebody says, all right, what's your fee going to be? And you say, oh, well, we're just going to do it hourly. We're just going to keep working until we think it's done. Like, imagine a client signing that contract. That's a little crazy, right? Because you could just work for, like, you could bill millions of dollars on that contract. So the middle ground where it's sort of you should know what your fee should be and you should be able to kind of control it. Is not really that many questions, but it's a little unusual, right? That's where cost plus fee probably doesn't really make sense because it just doesn't fit to the situation. It's really in these two extremes of very complicated or very repetitive and straightforward.